There was a moment when James Stockdale believed he might never see freedom again. His aircraft had been hit over North Vietnam. As flames swallowed the cockpit, he pulled the ejection handle and was thrown into the open sky. For a few silent seconds, suspended beneath his parachute, he had nothing but time to think. Below him waited the enemy. Above him was the last piece of freedom he would know for years. Later, Stockdale would say that during those few moments drifting toward the ground, he already knew what awaited him. Not days, not weeks, years. Years of imprisonment, years of interrogation, years of torture. As he descended, one thought crossed his mind. I'm leaving the world of technology and entering the world of Epictetus. It was a strange thing to think while falling toward captivity. Not his family, not his career, not whether he would survive. He thought about a Stoic philosopher who had lived nearly 2,000 years before him. Stockdale had spent years studying the teachings of Epictetus, a man born into slavery who believed that while no one controls what happens to them, everyone controls how they respond. At that moment, those teachings stopped being philosophy. They became survival. For the next several years, Stockdale endured beatings, isolation, starvation, and unimaginable psychological pressure. His captors wanted more than information. They wanted surrender. Not of his body, but of his identity. Every day, they tried to convince him that resistance was pointless, that hope was foolish, that pain was stronger than principle. Some prisoners gave in. Many couldn't endure the uncertainty. Others lost themselves long before they lost their freedom. But James Stockdale remained standing. Not because he never felt fear, he did. Not because he never suffered, he suffered constantly. He remained standing because somewhere inside him was a place his captors could never reach. His character. Years later, when people asked how he survived, he didn't talk about courage. He didn't talk about luck. He talked about discipline. About perception. About refusing to let external events decide the condition of his inner world. Long before modern psychology gave those ideas a name, the Stoics had already lived them. Now imagine yourself in that moment. Not inside a prison camp, but inside your own life. A relationship ends. Your career falls apart. Someone betrays your trust. You lose money. Your health changes. The future you've spent years building suddenly disappears. What's left? When everything outside you begins to collapse, what inside you is still standing? That question haunted another man long before James Stockdale was ever born. His name was Marcus Aurelius. History remembers him as one of Rome's greatest emperors. Powerful, respected, a ruler whose name has survived for nearly 2,000 years. But Marcus Aurelius never measured himself by his title. Every morning, he faced an enemy no army could defeat for him: his own mind. He battled fear, anger, temptation, pride, grief. The same invisible enemies every human being still fights today. Most people imagine that becoming emperor meant Marcus had finally reached security. The truth was exactly the opposite. The day he became emperor was the day life demanded more from him than ever before. Within only a few years, a deadly plague spread across the Roman Empire. Entire cities grew silent. Families vanished. The Roman army weakened. At the same time, enemies gathered along the northern frontier. Wars erupted. The empire struggled under enormous pressure. Political betrayal spread through Rome. Even within his own family, Marcus endured heartbreaking loss after heartbreaking loss. Again and again, life took something from him. Peace, health, friends, children, certainty. If anyone had a reason to become bitter, it was Marcus Aurelius. Yet something extraordinary happened instead. While the empire around him seemed to fall apart, Marcus himself became calmer, stronger, clearer. It's almost the opposite of what we'd expect. Most people believe strength comes after life becomes easier. Marcus discovered that strength is built precisely because life becomes harder. How? That's the question that has fascinated soldiers, psychologists, athletes, leaders, and ordinary people for centuries. Because if one man could remain steady, while an entire empire shook beneath his feet, perhaps strength has very little to do with circumstances. Perhaps we've been searching for it in the wrong place all along. But before Marcus Aurelius discovered what makes a person impossible to break, he first had to understand why so many people break in the first place. And the answer isn't suffering. It isn't failure. It isn't tragedy. It's something far quieter, something so ordinary that most of us never even notice it. Comfort. Because the greatest threat to your strength rarely arrives looking like pain. It arrives looking like convenience. It whispers instead of shouts. You've worked hard enough. You can start tomorrow. Just this once. Take the easy path. And that's how strength begins to disappear. Not all at once, but one comfortable decision at a time. Without realizing it, we begin training ourselves to avoid anything difficult. We avoid uncomfortable conversations. We avoid failure. We avoid rejection. We avoid uncertainty. We even avoid being alone with our own thoughts. Then one day, life places a real challenge in front of us. A loss we didn't expect. A betrayal we didn't deserve. A dream that suddenly falls apart. And we wonder why we feel so fragile. The truth is, life didn't make us weak. It simply revealed what we had, or hadn't, been building all along. Marcus Aurelius understood something that most people spend their entire lives chasing without ever finding. You cannot build an unbreakable life by avoiding everything that tries to break you. You build it by becoming stronger than the things that once controlled you. And that transformation begins in a place most people never think to look. Not in your circumstances, not in your career, not in your relationships, but in your own mind. Because before you can conquer the world, you must first learn to govern yourself. That idea sounds simple, almost obvious, until you begin paying attention to your own life. How many times has your mood been determined by something you couldn't control? A message arrives. Suddenly you're anxious. Someone criticizes you. Now you're angry. A friend succeeds. Without meaning to, you begin comparing your life to theirs. An unexpected problem appears. Your entire day changes because of it. Nothing inside you actually changed. Only the events around you did. Yet those events completely determined how you felt. Marcus Aurelius believed that was the greatest form of slavery. Not chains around your hands, but chains around your mind. Because anyone who can control your emotions controls you. Think about how much of your peace you've handed away without realizing it. A stranger's opinion, a social media comment, a delayed reply, a mistake you made years ago, even things that no longer exist continue living rent-free inside your mind. Marcus Aurelius refused to live that way, not because he lacked emotions, but because he understood something most people never discover. There is a space between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. Inside that space, your freedom lives. That lesson didn't come easily. Marcus learned it by watching life refuse to obey his plans. The plague didn't ask for permission before spreading across the empire. His enemies didn't wait until he felt prepared. The people he loved didn't stop dying simply because he was emperor. Life ignored his title. It reminded him of something every human being eventually learns. The universe doesn't negotiate. It simply unfolds. Most people spend their lives arguing with reality. This shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have treated me that way. My life should look different by now. Marcus asked a different question. Now that this has happened, who will I choose to become? That single shift separates victims from builders. Victims become trapped by the event. Builders become transformed by it. Imagine standing in the middle of a violent storm. You can scream at the wind, curse the rain, demand that the clouds disappear. The storm doesn't care. But you can build a stronger shelter. You can learn to navigate rough weather. You can become someone who no longer fears what once terrified you. The storm hasn't changed. You have. That was Marcus Aurelius's formula. Not controlling life, controlling yourself. And perhaps no one demonstrated that lesson more clearly than the man whose words changed Marcus forever. His name was Epictetus. Unlike Marcus, Epictetus wasn't born into wealth or power. He wasn't raised in a palace. He was born a slave. From the beginning of his life, almost everything was controlled by someone else. Where he lived, what he did, how he was treated, even whether he suffered. According to ancient accounts, his master was cruel. One day, while twisting Epictetus's leg, his master continued applying pressure as Epictetus calmly warned him, "You're going to break it." His master ignored him. The bone snapped. Epictetus looked at him and quietly said, "I told you it would." Whether every detail of that story happened exactly as history remembers isn't what matters. What matters is what the story teaches. Even when another man controlled his body, Epictetus refused to surrender ownership of his mind. Marcus Aurelius never forgot that lesson. If a slave could remain inwardly free, what excuse did an emperor have? And what excuse do we have today? Most of us aren't imprisoned behind iron bars. We're imprisoned by habits, by fear, by comparison, by the opinions of people we'll never meet, by the constant need to be approved. Marcus Aurelius believed those invisible prisons were often stronger than physical ones. Because people stop trying to escape them, they begin decorating them instead. They convince themselves that constant distraction is normal, that endless comparison is unavoidable, that peace will come after one more achievement, one more promotion, one more purchase, one more victory. But peace, built on circumstances, is always temporary. Because circumstances always change. Marcus searched for something that couldn't be taken away. Something no illness could steal, no betrayal could destroy, no failure could erase. He found it in character. Character doesn't disappear when money disappears. Character doesn't vanish when success fades. Character remains when everything else has been stripped away. That's why Marcus spent far more time building himself than building his reputation. He knew reputation belonged to other people. Character belonged to him. And once you truly understand that difference, your entire life begins to change. You stop asking, "How do I get people to respect me?" You begin asking, "Am I becoming someone worthy of my own respect?" That question is infinitely more powerful. Because the strongest people don't build their lives around applause. They build them around principles. But Marcus Aurelius believed there was still one obstacle capable of destroying even a disciplined mind. It wasn't failure, it wasn't criticism, it wasn't even suffering. It was something far more deceptive: success. Because if comfort can make you weak, success can make you careless. And history is filled with powerful people who forgot that the moment they believed they had arrived was the moment they stopped growing. Success is a strange test. When you're struggling, you know you need to improve. Failure makes your weaknesses impossible to ignore. But success has a way of hiding them. It whispers that you've already done enough, that you've earned the right to stop growing. That discipline can finally relax. Marcus Aurelius knew better. Every victory carried a hidden danger. Pride, not the healthy pride that comes from honest work. The kind that quietly convinces you that you're above correction, above learning, above humility. History is filled with people who were defeated, not by their enemies, but by their own success. Generals who became overconfident, kings who stopped listening, empires that believed they could never fall. Rome itself would eventually learn that lesson. Marcus understood that strength isn't something you achieve once. It's something you protect every single day. Imagine climbing a mountain. Reaching the summit feels incredible. The view is breathtaking. The hardest part seems over. But the mountain doesn't care that you've reached the top. One careless step, and everything changes. Life works the same way. Character demands maintenance. Not because you're weak, because you're human. Marcus Aurelius never believed he had conquered himself. That's why he kept writing, night after night, year after year. His journal wasn't a celebration of wisdom. It was a reminder to practice it. He warned himself against anger, against ego, against laziness, against becoming distracted by praise. Think about that for a moment. One of the most powerful men in history still needed daily reminders to remain humble. If Marcus Aurelius didn't trust himself to stay disciplined without constant reflection, why do we think we can? Perhaps the greatest mistake people make is believing that personal growth has a finish line. It doesn't. There is no final version of yourself waiting somewhere in the future. There is only the person you choose to become today, and tomorrow, and the day after that. Strength is not a destination. It's a relationship. A relationship with your habits, your values, your decisions. Ignore that relationship long enough, and it begins to fade. There's an old story from ancient Greece about a champion wrestler who was asked how he became so strong. He explained that, as a boy, he lifted a young calf onto his shoulders every day. The calf grew a little heavier each week, so did he. By the time the calf had become a full-grown bull, the boy had become strong enough to carry it. Whether the story is literally true doesn't matter. Its lesson certainly is. Strength rarely arrives through one extraordinary challenge. It grows through ordinary challenges repeated consistently. The difficult conversation you choose not to avoid, the workout you complete when no one is watching, the promise you keep after your excitement has disappeared, the apology you know you need to make, the temptation you quietly walk away from. None of these moments feel heroic. Yet together, they shape a person that life struggles to shake. Marcus Aurelius believed every small act of discipline was like placing another stone into an invisible fortress. At first, one stone seems meaningless, then another, and another. Weeks pass, months pass, years pass. One day, a storm arrives. People around you begin to panic. Fear spreads. Others lose themselves. Yet somehow, you remain standing. Not because you were born stronger. Because while everyone else was waiting for life to become easier, you were quietly building your fortress. And that's when you'll realize something extraordinary. The goal was never to eliminate hardship. The goal was to become someone hardship could no longer control. James Stockdale discovered that inside a prison camp. Epictetus discovered it while living as a slave. Marcus Aurelius discovered it while carrying the weight of an empire. 3 completely different lives, 3 completely different worlds, yet all of them arrived at the same truth. And perhaps that's why our story had to begin with James Stockdale. Remember James Stockdale? High above North Vietnam, suspended beneath a parachute, he looked down at a future he could no longer control. He couldn't choose where he was about to land. He couldn't choose the years of suffering that waited below. He couldn't choose the pain, the isolation, or the uncertainty. But there was one thing no prison could ever take from him: the freedom to choose the kind of man he would become. Nearly 2,000 years before that moment, Marcus Aurelius had written about the same truth. You cannot command what happens to you. You can only command yourself. That was never just philosophy. It was survival. It carried a Roman emperor through plague, war, betrayal, and unimaginable loss. It carried a slave named Epictetus through a life of chains. It carried James Stockdale through more than 7 years of captivity. And today, it can carry you through whatever life places in your path. Because life will test you. It will disappoint you. It will humble you. It will take things you thought would last forever. It will place obstacles in front of you that seem impossible to overcome. You cannot stop those storms from coming. Marcus Aurelius never promised that you could. Instead, he offered something far more valuable. The chance to become the kind of person that difficulty could no longer defeat. Not in a single day, not through one act of courage, but through thousands of quiet decisions. Every morning, you choose discipline over comfort. Every time you control your anger instead of letting it control you. Every moment, you refuse to surrender your character for temporary relief. Every setback, you turn into a lesson instead of an excuse. You are laying another stone. Stone by stone, thought by thought, choice by choice. You are building something the world cannot see, an inner fortress. And one day, a storm will arrive that would have destroyed the person you used to be. People around you will panic. Some will lose hope. Others will blame the world. But you'll notice something remarkable. You are still standing. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. That is Marcus Aurelius's formula. Not a secret, not a shortcut, a way of living. If this message resonated with you, write one word in the comments: fortress. Not because you've finished building your fortress, but because today you chose to lay another stone. And if you return tomorrow to lay one more, then you're no longer just reading about Stoicism. You're becoming the kind of person Marcus Aurelius believed nothing in this world could truly break. And that is where philosophy becomes life.